from that list. So now in our notes, under that list, we're going to write down all those values. So they were negative 0.751, 1.582, negative 1.419, and 0.58. Now all of these values are talking about the values that if I added them all up from the purple square root up above, that would be the sum of all of my residuals, but I need to do one more thing. What do I need to do? Square them. So now I'm going to go back into my calculator, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to square them. What that will look like is if I go all the way over to the next list, I'm just going to take whatever was in list number 4, and I'm going to square it. So y minus y hat, and square. So I go back to my calculator. I'm in my lists. I go to list number 5. I arrow up to tell it I want to put everything in list 5 and hit enter. And what I want to put in list 5 is whatever's in list number 4, so second 4, and I want to square it. So I use the power button, which is on the far right hand side under the clear, and I square it. And then I hit enter. And all of these things are the things that are supposed to show up when I add them up underneath my square root. So I have 0.564, 2.503 roughly, 2.014 roughly, and 0.336 roughly. So let's go put those in our notes. As you can see, this is kind of a long process. So 0.564. Notice how none of these are negative. 2.503. If you have calculator difficulties, I will help you after we're done. 2.014. Remember, all these instructions are on the website. 0.336. So all these things are your residuals in the orange squared. So 0.751, which was negative, squared is 0.564, so on and so forth. And you'll notice that back up into the purple square root, I want to add all those up. So in my calculator, if I wanted to, I could just add up all these red numbers, and that's the number that goes on the top up here. I could add up all the red numbers, that's the top of the fraction. What I'm going to do instead is a shortcut on the calculator, or at least I think it's a shortcut. So now I'm back in my table, and I look at list number 5. That's where all that information is. So I go to my calculator, and this time I go stat, calc, enter, and I want to do some one variable statistics, which means tell me about this list. Which list was it?
5.
5. So I go second, number 5. And then I hit enter. So this is giving me information all about list number 5. And in list number 5, I am looking for the EX thing because I want the sum of that list. So that's up here. So this sum of this list, 5.4 blah blah blah, is the sum of my list number 5. So I could add up all those red numbers by myself, or I could let the calculator do it for me. Up to you.
What's the EX for?
Don't worry about it. I could have performed that on list 4, but I didn't. So EX is talking about the sum of this list, number 5. So the number that I'm looking to put inside that square root is 5.417 roughly. So now I go back, and I'm going to calculate this root mean squared error. That was that purple square root. So off to the side here, I'm going to talk about this purple square root. The purple square root that we were talking about on the top, 5.417 to 3 decimal places. That's the top, the e of y minus y hat squared. On the bottom, how many data points were there?
4.
Yeah, I see 4. 2, 3, 6, and 9. So that's the n that came from the purple formula for the root mean squared error. And then you always subtract off 2. So this 4 is saying that there were 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So now I type in my calculator the square root of that stuff and see what happens. So I go back to my calculator and I quit out of this screen or clear, and I want the square root of 5.417, and instead of putting parentheses or whatever 4 minus 2, when I take 4 minus 2 I know it's 2, so I divide by 2. And then I hit enter. And this number, 1.646 roughly, is my root mean squared error. So now I go back and I go, okay, my root mean squared error is 1.646. And that's if we're using our residual line. In the past we've taught the median line, but for you, I don't want to use this median line. I want to use the regression line that we just worked with. This is going to help you out in statistics and AP statistics, so we're not going to use the median line. So cross off the word median. 1.646. So in our class, what I want you to try right now is I want you to calculate the regression line for the data that they give us. We're not going to use the median line. And maybe keep track in a chart off to the side. You know that we use list 1 and list 2. So the age is going to be in list 1. Your height is going to be in list 2. And then off to the side, you're going to have to create lists 3, 4, and 5. So you make a chart here with, we know that the first one is the y hat, and that's in list number 3. We know the next one is y minus y hat, and that's list number 4. And we know the last one in list number 5 is y minus y hat squared. Put that in list number 5. And then you're going to have to make a chart for each of the data points. And I'm not going to put that up on the screen when I go over it with you guys in a little while. I will show you how that looks like in your calculator. Make sure you have the same thing. But that's what I'd like you to try. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. See if you can figure that out, and then we're going to talk about it. Okay, so something that we haven't done before is to plot this stuff on your calculator. We've done plots in here before, so I didn't really cover that in the first part of the example. I'm just going to remind you of how to do this. So you might want to write down these instructions in case you don't remember. I'm going to go to my calculator. I have entered in my data into list 1 and list 2, as you can see on my calculator. If I want to plot this data, that means I have to go into my stat plots. Stat plots are the thing that are above the y equals. So to get to that, you go second y equals. Second y equals. And then you go enter, because you want to get into your stat plots, and you hit enter again because you want to turn them on. So what we're looking for is something called a scatter plot, and the scatter plot is the first kind of graph. Mine's already highlighted up here. Down below, it says that your X list came from list number 1. If that's not what yours says, change it so that it does say that. And then your Y list is from number 2. And I like the pluses. It doesn't really matter which one you use, but I like the pluses, so I use pluses when I do mine. So on, scatter plot, L1, L2, and whichever kind of marking you like, the pluses for me are easiest to see on my graph, so that's what I use. Then, if I want to graph this, I go to zoom. And the cool thing is, when you go to zoom, if you arrow down, what you will see eventually is that there's something designed specifically for this. See where it says zoom stat? That means take the stuff in your list, your statistics, and graph it. So then I go enter, and there it is. Zoom and arrow down until you see the stat. This is where you'll see zoom stat. Was it number 9 or 0? 9. Zoom 9. So now I'm going to put that on our notes so you don't forget.
So that's just so you can see a graph.
Yes, it's to see a graph. Second, y equals, enter, enter. Make sure that you're using list 1, list 2, and then we're going to go zoom stat. And that will give us our scatter plot. Okay, that was the whole point of that. Again, don't forget to write down. Now we're going to use our calculator and find the regression line. So this is where you go stat, calc, for, enter. Write it down. So I go into my calculator, stat, calc, number 4, we're not using the median, we're going to do the linear regression, enter, oh, look, I actually have to do it one more time, enter. And here's my regression line. So y equals 5.728x plus 81.434. I'm going to write that down in my notes. And there was another enter here. Remember that this is your prediction line, so you're going to go y hat equals, and the equation that we had was 5.728x plus 81.434. This is now the equation that I'm going to put into my y equals. So I go into my calculator, and I put this in my y equals. So here's my y equals. I clear out what I had before, and I type in 5.728x plus 81.434. Enter. Okay, now that's in my calculator. Next, it says calculate the residuals. Remember that my residuals are the same thing as my y minus my y hat. Or in other words, this was list number 2 minus list number 3. But before we can do this, we have to put the stuff into list 3, the residuals, or the y predictions, y hat. So now I'm going to go into my L3 and do the special thing that we talked about before. So here's my calculator, and you're going to want